Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all my other episodes in all the usual places or on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome special guest Stan Lai, who is the best Chinese language playwright and director in the world, according to the BBC, and Asia's top theatre director, Asia Week, and the major contemporary Asian playwright of his time, perhaps of all time, Robert Brustein. And his amazing play, Secret Love in Peach Blossom Land, was actually chosen by the New York Times as one of the essential works of theatre of the last 100 years. And they only chose 20 plays, and his is the only work from Asia that was chosen. So I think we've got the message that Stan is, in fact, a playwright and very well known and very well admired and loved. And he's also actually an author, and you can see the book, those who are watching behind me, his amazing book, Creativitry, which we will mention during the conversation. So, and there's more I could say about Stan, but let's let that emerge as we go through the conversation. Stan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my great pleasure, Catherine. I think that your word, truth and transcendence, are two, I think, of the most important words that we can figure. I mean, if you wanted to list the most important words, I think they would be at the top of those lists.
Thank you. That's very kind. I agree entirely. And I'll just tell everybody where they can find you, Stan, which is pwshop.com/en. And I will put that and also the link for your book in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
So,
Yes.
Stan, when we were talking, you're a man of much experience and much creativity and much creation, and one could even say you've lived many lives. You know, there's so much we could talk about. And in the prequel, the thing that really struck me was when you were talking about watching the clouds and acceptance.
Yes.
And I wondered if you'd like to lead off. I know this is like a very personal story for you, but it was just so touching and so powerful, I thought. So,
and you're the first person who's gotten me to talk about this, So you made me think about, because you're asking me about where my creativity comes from, and that's a difficult question for any artist because it comes through life and everything. But I think there's something about me. There's a sort of an openness about the way I work. I was trying to explain to a friend the other night. I was saying my work, I always start out with a sort of with an avant-garde mentality, but the work is always user-friendly. So to me, what is avant-garde-ness? I would call it just an openness. In other words, I never will define anything. And this gets to the story we talked about in the pre-call, which is when I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the States, and when coming back home from school, I would often spend time just lying down on this little hill, and then just gazing upwards at the sky. And I would see the clouds coming and going. And as an adult, thinking back at that moment, what was I really doing? I wasn't doing anything. I was just sort of letting things happen, seeing the sky happen. Basically, that's what I was doing. I wasn't trying to figure out what sort of formations they were making or what kind of clouds these are called, or this one looks like a cat, that one looks like a dog. No, I was just watching the clouds and sort of just an exercise, not even an exercise. It was just being there and letting everything just go. And maybe that's what ties in with what you're talking about, acceptance, because you could easily force your will on those clouds and say, hey, sky, you're so ugly now. What can you please make yourself more beautiful? And then maybe the clouds will or will not change their formation to please you. So I guess at a very young age, I'm talking about 5 or 6, I would be doing this.
how beautiful to be doing that at that age. And it felt like there was a quality of stillness in there as well, which I think is, although over here in the West, there's this sort of I don't know, legend, myth that people of Chinese heritage are better at stillness than people of Western heritage. Is there any truth to that?
I doubt it. I know so many people who are very, very unstill. Yes, and I was actually dealing with a friend of mine who studies Buddhism, a costume designer, and she's been giving hell to a lot of her colleagues recently. And I was talking to the colleagues, and I said, "What's wrong with her?" And they said, "We don't know. Isn't she Buddhist?" And I said, "Okay, well, maybe she's trying to teach you how to cope with her when she's being so difficult, and so that we had a good laugh out of that. But it truly is not too easy in this world to be still. Yeah, but that's something that we strive for.
Yeah. And did that quality stay with you as you then evolved from there, or did it sort of leave you and come back and
It really stayed with me, Catherine, and only when you sort of picked it out of me did I start thinking about, oh, those hours, minutes, I don't know how long they were because time sort of stops when you do that. They were really important to me because they really shaped my later concepts about art, about theater, about, if you're writing a play, what is a play? Well, don't worry what a play is about. It will form itself if you give it the chance. And if you think, oh, play, you have to go by the textbook and you have to write a formal beginning and whatever what Aristotle said, what all these people said. Sure, you can write a play that way, but in the end, that's not my way of working. I will approach a topic or a feeling or anything that I think that I want to work with now, and then let it form itself like the clouds were forming in front of me. It's like at that moment, what is the best thing to do? uh, have a look at the sky. Maybe that's the best thing that they're trying to tell you is this is the way to do it. And when you let that happen, when you let things happen and not force your concepts or your will on them, they turn out to be quite nice.
yeah. I must say I'd have found that myself on those occasions
Mm.
where I've managed to do that. Get out
Hmm.
of the way.
It's not that easy, actually. Yeah, and and it can also be a little intimidating because if you say I'm just letting go of all of the whatever the rules are, and then because I've been doing it for over 40 years, I know that if you let go of the rules, there will be a new set of rules that come in, but they are the rules that come organically, and they are tied to the piece that you're doing in their own organic way. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so that two different kinds of rules you're talking about there. Uh,
Right. Rules that tradition has set down, history has set down, many great masters of the past have set down. And of course, you need to know all these things. If you're whatever artistic field you're in, if you're a painter, you can't say, I don't care what Michelangelo did. No, you have to care. You have to care about what everybody did. But when you're doing your own thing, you don't have to let that really, shape your work or influence your work in any way.
right. So it's good to know the rules and then hold them lightly, allow them to let them go and allow. You were
And
saying when
respect them.
natural
Right.
rules come through. Could you give me an example of that? Let's say in relation to your work. So it sounds like you go
Sure.
into it very openly and allow it to evolve. What sort of
But
rules
when,
emerge?
as you ask me, I also seem to realize that what tradition and history has brought us sometimes is also what nature has brought us, because they would be working in the same earth, on the same earth that I'm working on, and they would be seeing the same seasons and days and nights and the rhythms of things and the peculiarities of the human species, and all of this. They made some rules, and so when we are trying to make rules, I think our great teacher would be nature. How, I mean, often I say, if you need inspiration, just look at a tree. Look at a tree, any tree. The tree outside your house or in your city or wherever you are. And it doesn't have to be beautiful in your own sense, but just look at it. It's such an amazing thing. How did it grow to be the way it did? And now that you're looking at it, can you see how amazing this organism is? And it works. And it works for what it's supposed to work for. When the wind blows, it sways and it doesn't fall. And then when the sun shines on it, it doesn't die. It's really it's beautiful. And then when you think of your own work, isn't that what I want to do? Isn't that I need a work that can stand up and can live. It's not gonna it takes a pounding and it falls apart, or a story that is not complete, it just falls apart in the middle. The audience doesn't like that. The audience is very, very smart. They can sense when something's wrong, when maybe your characters are not totally, thought out correctly. And then there's a gap. There's something between what a person says and what he does, and the audience immediately goes, I don't want to go with this. This is too much for me. So in the end, I think the rules we make, somehow they seem to attach to some sort of greater rules. It's just that we're finding different ways to express them.
Yes, that makes sense. And in the way you just described, the relationship between the play and the tree, I got this image then of you almost being like a conductor who's tuning into the power of the roots and the land and the power of the sky and the power, almost as if you're harnessing these different energies, and kind of tending it into something which turns into a play. So it's not all coming from you. Is that
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it. But and also the conductor metaphor is also very good, because what we're doing is we're shaping something that moves in time, and it's not an easy thing to do. I think I really sort of have my compassion for the beginners nowadays, even though I'm no longer a beginner, because I sometimes think it's really not that easy to write a play, to direct a play, because the only thing the audience will accept is something that is complete. Even though it's fragmented, you can do a very fragmented work, but there has to be some structural unity to it for the audience to be able to hang with you throughout the whatever duration it is. And so, as a conductor, if I may use the word, you're really calling together all the different elements of the play, which includes dialogue, not just dialogue, but the scene, history, the relationships between the people, all of the psychology within the characters, and this is all moving in time. And so, how do you fit this together so that you, as a conductor, or may I use the word maybe a sorcerer, if you're a sorcerer, then the magic trick has to happen at a certain moment that you know about. It's not like you do a trick and then, oh, sorry, it's over. It's like you prescribe when that magic happens, and then you have to make it happen. So as a playwright, as a director, this is what we do, and it's certainly not that easy.
Mm. And something as well which really struck me when I was on your website looking at some of the images there, there'll be like an image of a stage where
Hmm.
it almost looks like there's two or three plays going on simultaneously on the stage. So you've got a little group of people over here, another little group over here, maybe another little group over here. And each little group is only focused in on itself. But they're all there at the same time for a reason. Now, I found that fascinating. Could you say something about that?
Sure, that's probably one of the features of my work, is that I like to juxtapose, time and place and people, and I love layering things. It's like I think audiences also like that when they're not looking at just one thing, but they're seeing, oh, this is part of a layer of different things and I think maybe what you were looking at is I have one way of configuring my theater into where the audience is seated in the center and the play revolves around it. It's a very novel way of doing things, and I started in 2000 with a play called A Dream Like a Dream, which is 8 hours long, and that's it really unfolds, and you can be watching here in front of you, and then to the side of you, another scene will start, and then this scene may not be ending, and it's okay. You can take it all in at the same time. It's not like I'm trying to isolate them, but I'm trying to make it all work together so that just like life, what you and I are talking right now, but outside our windows, other things are happening, and that's the whole rhythm of the way it is. So you got it. This is the way. This is what I like to do. Put different people, different times and places together. Just layer them together at the same time on stage, and I think this is what the theater can do better than film. A lot of things film can do better than theater, but this is one thing the theater can do that very few other things can do.
Absolutely right. Yes, because there's something about the physical presence of human beings in the space with you that's completely different.
Exactly. And if I put you, Catherine, next to another actor, and then the audience knows you're not in the same place, you see what I'm saying? This is what theater can do. And the two of you just don't acknowledge each other, and you're not in the same place. And suddenly, experience unfolds as a different thing.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. That happens in life all the time, doesn't it? I mean, you could
Sure.
literally be in the same room as several other people and either
Mhm.
be really aware of them or not be really aware of them. And it's a completely different story unfolds from there.
More and more today, when we're all working with what I call our master, our little master in our palm, and we're just trying to do all sorts of different things. Our master is calling us to go back to it and do all sorts of very unimportant things. But that's the way life is, and so we're consumed by our little what would you call? I recently wrote a play that was performed in Taipei called Descent. It's a comedy about two vagabonds who are philosophers, and they realize that everyone is working on a cell phone, and they say, "What? Oh, that's a cell phone! Oh!" And they laugh, and they think, "Oh, did you think? Yes, you also thought the same thing as I did? Yeah." They thought it was a calligraphy stone. For Chinese calligraphy, it's the stone to make the ink. So why is everybody carrying around this calligraphy stone? So this is one of the jokes I made, and so if they claim they come from the heavens and they don't know anything about modern life, and so to see everyone, carrying around this black, sort of, what do you call it, a plate, then that's what they think it is.
Beautiful. A lovely, lovely way to make fun of a little
Right.
satire on what we're all doing. So how
Yeah.
long does it how long does it take you to create a play?
Well, it's hard to say because the incubation always happens inside, and then that can be a month or a year or years. But when I actually get down to it, and my career has been often where, working in the theater these days, it's no longer, you can no longer say, "Hey, I'm writing this play, and when it's done, it's going to be done." You can't say that. You will have a deadline. You will have a date where it has to open, and you haven't even written it, and tickets are already being sold. That's many of the works I've done are like that. So when I actually get down to it, it takes maybe just a few weeks to write, if it's all in my head. Um, Quicker ones have been done in 1 week, and then the obligatory 6 weeks at least to rehearse it in the rehearsal room with the actors. So 2-3 months I think would be a pretty fast work to put on
Wow.
a new play.
So that
Yeah,
sounds like that sounds like there could be some pressure some of the time.
all the time,
Okay,
all the
so
time there's pressure. Yeah.
how do you then protect that beautiful connection with acceptance and stillness alongside that?
That's a very good point, because I long ago I realized, to blow your top at when the circumstances aren't going your way, it doesn't help things, and if it doesn't help things, why do you do it? And who chose this path? You chose this path, and you chose this path, and you're very lucky to be successful in this path. And that's why people would be willing to give you a theater space and let you sell tickets for a play that they've never even seen before. So you have the trust of producers and the audience. They're going to buy a ticket without even knowing what the play is about, and then you're going to have to write a play and direct it and satisfy them and satisfy yourself at the same time. So it's enormous pressure when you think about it. It is. But I guess I resign myself to the fact that this is what I wanted. And isn't it great? Yeah, it's great. And so you just find a way to do it. Is it perfect at opening night? Never, never. But I tend to think that, people like Shakespeare and Moliere, they were never satisfied on opening night either. I think a work has to be seen by the audience, and then you understand how the audience sees it, and then you go back and make revisions, and finally the play achieves its perfect form.
Right. And do your plays, because as I understand it, some playwrights have plays which are performed for a period of time and then never performed again. And then other playwrights have plays which are performed and then in the future, and then in the future, and in the future. What's the case with yours?
In my world, which is the Chinese-speaking world, I started in Taiwan, and then since the late 90s, was started working in China. So I'm one of the few artists that can work in both in Taiwan and China, and both audiences accept me. I mean, it's to me that's an easy thing because we're all Chinese and we're all speaking the same language and we have the same culture. But the way politics are these days, sometimes it's hard to work within that frame. But anyway, I think that to be able to deliver during the to speak to everyone in the end, Catherine, you really have to please yourself in the end. It's like my work is like it still has to sit with a commercial audience, so it's not like I work as an artist. I hate that word because it sounds so sort of like I'm bragging about something, but I like to consider myself more of a craftsman. Okay, if a craftsman like me, my work has to be seen by the market, by the commercial, then some of my work is, as you say, it keeps on performing. Like Secret Love in Peach Blossom Land has performed not every day. It's not like Broadway. Our world is not like that. Broadway, you have 8 performances a week and you keep going until you can't. And in our world, it's like every weekend we perform. And then we do maybe 20 weekends a year. And then we do the play again next year. And then we do the play again next year. And so Secret Love in Peach Blossom Land has been going for 40 years like that. Other plays, certainly they go up once and then they're never seen again. For different reasons, like sometimes I feel like, this play, what a great play. Why don't we do it more? Well, there are many circumstances. Sometimes an actor is not available and you can say, well, let's change one. No, but we don't want to change one. Sometimes, it's different. Sometimes it's a play that people love, but it's just not for a commercial audience, So there are all sorts of things. And I often get to I've written over 40 plays, and I think still in repertory, in our sort of repertory, which means maybe 10 weekends a year. I think there's still at least 20 that are going around. Last year there were 14 that were going on in the year, and so I have to take care of these. I have to be there when they perform. I try to be there. I can't be there because often they're performing in different cities on the same weekend. So it's a different sort of set of rules and in the world that we live in.
Yes, very different, because I think perhaps over in the West more you get situations where someone's written the play and then somebody else produces it and directs it.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
your
Yeah.
craft is the creation of it and the production of it as well. So do you have
I
do you
would.
have do you have apprentices who if you're not able to do it in a particular city, that they take care of that for you.
I do. I have some very good apprentices, but I must say, in the end, I have to, if we're reviving a work, in the end, I have to be there at the end for the final technical rehearsals or for the final rehearsal period. Otherwise, I don't know. It's, Catherine, our work is handicraft. It's not like we can give it to AI and they can do it. It's there's something about handicraft, about using your hands, and in the end, you craft a piece. And of course, the apprentices know when I'm there and I put the final touches on, they will go, "Oh, yeah, right. Why didn't I do that?" You know, and sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's pausing here for 2 more seconds, or making the rhythm here a little faster, and then the whole thing changes. The whole chemical reaction is different, and you don't know that unless you know that. That's the difficult part of our art.
Yeah. The energy of that reminds me of Tai Chi. I don't.
Mm, mm,
I think you
mm.
said that you are a Buddhist. Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, you're correct.
And is there an energy? Do you do Tai Chi? Is that part of your practice?
Not Tai Chi per se, but I do meditation.
Right.
And yes, and I work in the Tibetan tradition, which the meditation often involves movement also.
Beautiful. So does the rhythm of that also kind of parallel what
Oh,
you
for
were just
sure.
describing?
Well, Tai Chi is so amazing, incredible, because it works on the fundamental equation of the yin and the yang. So if that little symbol there, if you think about it, it's two fish in a round dish, and if one of them pushes this way, the other one, it's not going to get more space, but it's going to just be in a different position. And that's life. If you really push and you want something and you force yourself to get it, it's just going to be pushing something into that space. So it's a wonderful philosophy and a beautiful way to keep your body in shape. And I think the philosophy itself is definitely deep within me. And I think a lot of I think often in these terms of the yin and the yang, and how pushing and shoving, um, in the end, there's a compensation for that on the other side of the symbol. And so if you force yourself to get something here, then you're going to have to give it back somewhere there.
And I suppose in a play, you've
Hmm.
got, if you add a few minutes there, you may need to take away a few minutes there. Is that right? Is there a sort of a dance between the different possibilities?
Well, the dance is not to add and subtract, but to get to where the whole thing is a unity, is a whole thing. It's complete. And that's what is difficult. Yeah, I think for any artist throughout history, this is the thing that bothers them the most did I is it done? Is it totally the way it should be? You know. So,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a feeling I get sometimes in my work. I work with humans and they're sort of evolving. There's a
yes.
feeling I get sometimes whether that feeling that something has sort of landed, that
Hmm.
it's landed. It's no longer
Hmm.
traveling. It's landed now. Do you get
Then,
a similar thing with your?
oh, very much so, very much so. So, just today I was working on a play I hadn't worked on in 12 years. And just 2 days ago, I was in another city working on a play I hadn't done in 30 years. And revisiting these works, of course, is very it's emotional, beautiful. And then I'm seeing, wow, that's what I was thinking 30 years ago, and I wouldn't want to touch it. I wouldn't want to change it. I think it's very good the way it is. And but what I'm trying to say is that always you're searching for a way to be complete. And if you say something has landed, yeah, the play I'm talking about called Twilight Sky, 30 years ago, it landed 30 years ago. So there's no way there's no need for me to try to put a big surgical operation on it. There's no need. However, the one I was working on today, just before talking with you, it's called Dream Walk. It was done secretly at the Wuzhen Theater Festival, which 12 years ago, when we started this theater festival in China, that has now become one of the most important festivals in Asia. And I purposely wrote and directed this work for 3 actors that was not on the what do you call, well, not on the program. So we didn't announce it. And so you had to hear about it to be able to, oh, what? Oh, Stan Lai and who and 3 very famous actors are doing what? They're doing this mysterious work, where? And they have to find out, and then they have to be there. They have to get there at 10 in the evening. And so we did this very interesting work, site specific, that I'd never come back to because it was so special. But now that I'm coming back to it, I said, wow, 12 years ago, I didn't write this properly. It was such a wonderful novelty that people didn't care if it wasn't that great, but so now I'm working hard to modify it. But the whole purpose of it in the end is to make it land, as you say. If it's landed, then in the future I'm not going to have to dissect it or do anything to it.
I love that. That's very cheeky what you did with that play. Fantastic. Keep people on their toes.
Yes.
Can't see Stan Lai. You don't know where he is or what he's doing.
Right. And then if you do see this work, then you can brag about it. That's the whole thing.
I was there.
Right. Where? Oh, you wouldn't know because they didn't even announce it. You see?
Exactly. Well, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Very good. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'd love if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit more about how you became a playwright.
Quite by accident, I would say, because I grew up in Taiwan. I was born in America, and then I grew up in Taiwan. And the Taiwan of my adolescence was a place of martial law. Free expression was not at all encouraged. Many people were thrown into prison for speaking their minds. And so all of my contemporaries, all of my classmates, none of them became artists. They all became, mechanical engineers and doctors and lawyers. And I think so many of them were very brilliant and also talented, but it just wasn't the right time. None of our parents would want us to be artists. It would be, how are you going to survive? How are you going to feed yourself? Not to mention the fact that if you go into theater, what a disgrace. It's because, the Chinese conception of theater from the Qing dynasty, which is like 1900, would be, the social status of actors would be the same as like prostitutes, so, and it's that was the sort of stigma that was on all of us. So I had interest in all sorts of things growing up, in drawing and painting and music. And actually, I spent my college playing guitar in this folk cafe. So it was called Idea House. So I said I graduated from Idea House, basically. But and so theater seemed to me, we weren't. It's not like you're in London and you can if you're a kid, you can just go to a play anytime you want. We did not have any plays in Taipei when I was growing up. So how did I become a playwright? That's a crazy question, because it was a crazy time. So what happened was when I got to the point where I graduated as an English major, and I wanted to go on to grad school, and I chose 2 things. One was creative writing, which I thought I might be good at, writing novels and things. The second was theater, because I thought that theater would be a combination of all of the things that I was interested in, literature and film and, drawing and painting and music and all that. And at the same time, my fiance, my wife now of 48 years, we were going to get married. And so she was also she was deciding on where to go also for grad school. And of course, we wanted to be together. So it turned out that any creative writing program I was accepted to, she was not accepted. she was going into educational philosophy. And any theater program I was selected to, she got into too, also, So in the end, it's like, the clouds took, gave their vote and, sent us toward Berkeley, which is where I went for a PhD in theater, and she went for her master's in educational philosophy. And that's what happened. And it's like you look at the sky and maybe you don't think the sky can tell you anything, but that's basically the sky is talking to us saying, you do theater. You're not going to be a novelist. You're probably not going to be very good as a novelist. So you do theater. And at Berkeley, I was trained as a scholar, but at the same time as a director. They had this lofty sort of goal of training what they called scholar directors. And they were very frustrated because for many years they weren't able to find this scholar director. When I finally got my degree, one of my professors, he sent me a note, and I was so moved because he said, for the scholar director, we always thought we had gotten to the point where we thought he was the abominable snowman, but in you, we think we have found him. So I didn't know what that meant at the time, because I hadn't even started my career. But I went back to Taiwan, to a new school. They were very sincere, and they asked me to teach there, so I did. But I had no teaching materials at all. So it's like, can you imagine, Catherine, if you're going to teach theater somewhere and you want to teach acting, but you don't have any scripts. It's like you don't have any access to any modern or classical script. We had Shakespeare in Chinese, but it was a sort of a 1920s translation, and not very fit for actor training. And I had a couple of Chekhovs, and it was full of mistakes, and a couple of Ibsens, and that was it. And so how can I train my acting students if I don't have any scripts, So there is where I decided to throw away a lot of my training and say, okay, let's do actor training by just using our own life experience and building scenes out of these life experience. And the scenes became plays, and the audiences really liked them. And I became a playwright. So quite by accident, I would say.
Wow.
Or you could say quite by plan. You could
Quite
say
fan.
this was all
Or you
by
could
plan.
say
Yeah.
that love took you there.
Yeah, of course, love took me there for sure, definitely, and necessity also, because I didn't think when I was going back to teach, because my wife and I, we talked about this, that we could have stayed in America, but we wanted to do this, and we knew that there would be a lot of obstacles, a lot of challenges, because we knew that there wasn't much going on in culture in Taiwan at the time. But I never specifically thought that I would lack teaching materials. I never thought of that. And then when I first started teaching, I said, "Oh my God!" I was teaching theater history, and I had nothing to teach. So I started translating plays like mad. But then I said, "I'm never going to be able to translate enough plays to teach this properly." And acting, I mean, what am I going to do? Translate, Harold Pinter and then Tom Stoppard and then William Shakespeare. I mean, in the end, there was one very important thing that happened, and that is that the right thing to do? Even if I could, would I bring all these works into Chinese and then train my actors that way? Because these are all foreign plays. What about us? What about our own? What is our way of making theater? And that's why I started doing it myself, and without that much confidence, but a lot of passion, and the audiences really liked what we were doing, and we did become quite successful at what we were doing.
Beautiful. And of course, those three British playwrights that you mentioned, they're very much all about the British story.
Yes.
Because I remember at school looking at those and thinking, these are about what it's like to be a human being in Britain at different times. That's what that was about. And I had a look at the your amazing play, Secret Love in Peach
Secret Love
Blossom Landone.
in Peach.
And that's about a story which we Westerners might not understand because it's
That's
placed
true.
where it's placed.
Yes.
And the thing you said
right.
about the political situation and what it was like in Taiwan as you were growing up, it really looks like in your work's very informed by that sensitivity to those political power pressures, etc., mingled with what it is to be human. Is that correct?
Totally correct. And what you say about your compatriots, then there also is stuff that oozes past the border and becomes universal, of course, in their works, particularly Shakespeare. And I tend to hope that my work is the same way. So Secret Love in Peach Blossom Land, it's about a particular time in the 1980s where this is something that even kids in Taiwan today don't know, is that Taiwan and China were separated for 40 years, meaning that if you came from China to Taiwan, there was no way you could telephone or write your loved ones. There was no way to even know what happened to them. It was totally cut off between, all communication was cut off. And so that play, the background is from there, and it takes it from there. And if you know that, it's fine. The play is not that challenging in terms of, it's not like a question of, oh, I can't understand this. Of course you can. Of course you can. Yeah, look at East and West Berlin, even. You could probably make some sort of analogy there too.
Yeah. Israel and Gaza. I mean, there's places
Yes,
all over the place where you
all over,
can't, or you're not supposed to.
where two people could get lost and not find each other, basically,
Yes.
and then they would be living in the same city. That's the story of Secret Love.
Yeah.
They thought that the other had was left behind somewhere else. Let's say if someone came out of Gaza and was living in Israel, and then they thought that their loved one was still back in Gaza, and then 40 years later they realize, no, but life is already over. So what do you do?
So touching. And on a heart level, anyone can feel that. And you're
Yes,
right. So that
yes.
does go beyond the borders in terms of the human elements of it. Although
I know that. And when we perform today, and we've done a lot of performances this year because it's the 40th anniversary of this play, I really feel that the young people today, they can latch into it because they have to be told this is this is what happened to my great grandparents' generation. Oh, I see. But at the same time, it's something that they totally understand.
amazing. Well, Stan, I could quite happily carry on talking to you for hours because it's so fascinating. I will just mention your book again, Creativitry.
Okay.
Um,
hmm
would you like to just say something about that to kind of let people know
Sure. Sure.
why they might go and check it out?
I wrote this book about creativity in 20 years ago. I wrote it in Chinese, and it's sold 1 million copies in the Chinese world. And it's something that comes from my heart because as a teacher, I always thought that creativity couldn't be taught. And as a creator, I thought that, if I'm trying to pass on something to my assistants or my students, it's hard. How am I going to make them see this? It's frustrating. And so for many years, I thought it's none of my business, because it's not part of my job description to be able to make you creative. If you can want to learn about directing, I can teach you about directing or playwriting, but that is something you have to figure out for yourself. But 1 year traveling in India, I had a breakthrough, and that was there is a line in Buddhism that applies actually to everything, which says basically if you are on the road to practice, if you're trying to practice the Dharma, you need two things: you need wisdom and you need method. And that's true for anything. If we go back to Tai Chi, if you're trying to learn to be a Tai Chi artist practitioner, and you know all the skills, you know all the moves, but you don't know what it's about, which is the wisdom of it, you're not going to go very far. And if I mean, Catherine, you're one of the most eminent podcasters. So you have the skills to be a podcaster, but do you have the wisdom of podcasting, whatever that is? I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, but you obviously have it, or you wouldn't be so successful. So wisdom and method, and suddenly I thought, wait a minute, we don't teach that. We only teach method. we don't teach wisdom. And what is wisdom? And so I went to the dictionary. I went to Webster's. You probably don't use that in UK, but
No, but I've
anyway,
heard of it.
Webster's, well, yeah, Webster says wisdom is the quality of being wise. And I said, wait a minute. It's true. You can look it up. And wise is characterized by wisdom. And I'm saying, whoa, we're going in a loop here, and what happened? What happened to wisdom? And there is what I found was the whole problem with the whole educational system, not only in the creative arts, but period. I think we just teach method in everything. And no one teaches wisdom because no one actually dares to say what is wisdom. Because if I say I consider this to be wisdom, you can say, so that's how shallow you are. or or you can claim to say, okay, this is wisdom, and then you become a cult. So it's tough either way. So a philosopher friend of mine told me, he said, the reason why Webster's probably did that wasn't because they couldn't define the word, it's because the word must be defined individually, and you have to take the word yourself. And it has a lot to do, particularly in democracies these days, with what we call the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness is wisdom. I don't think it's anything deeper than that. That is it. It's what you choose, what you think is the right thing to do in life, the right choices to make in life. That's wisdom. And for the arts, this is something that had to be pointed out. And so I started developing this graph, this map, this design, this drawing that was like split in two. It's like I realized the important thing is that to learn about theater or to learn about the arts, to be creative, first you need to learn your method in a place called the arts, which is like school, like, RADA or something. You learn acting there, or you learn violin at the Royal Academy of Music. Now, there's another thing called wisdom, and that is separate. It's in a different domain, and the domain is called life. So you have to learn that thing in life, and you have to pursue it yourself. Your teacher's not going to be able to tell you where that is. And so only through the combination of these two can you possibly become creative, or at least your creativity will come to any worth. And so that's the starting point of the book. It's that my deep belief is that everyone has it. Everyone is creative. All of us are created creative. Okay, so so if the problem is we've lost touch so deeply with the wisdom side of it, and that we spend all of our time doing the method. And that's why I use the example of the concert pianist Fu Cong, the great Chinese pianist, who specialized in Chopin, passed away a few years ago. We were chatting one day. He was the juror for a lot of these international piano competitions. And I said, so what's that like? And he said, oh my God, he said, the fingers on these youngsters are so incredible. And I said, well, that's good. And then he suddenly paused and said, but where's the music? You see? So that is precisely music. What he said, the music, that's the wisdom of it. And the fingers, that's the method of it. So you can score 100, 200 points in method, but still not make anything worthwhile, you know. Or you can be incredibly wise and then you don't have the fingers. I'm sorry, you're not going to be on stage, So it's got to be a combination of both. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So the book, well, I thought I had something to offer to anyone who's in the creative line of work. And
I think I definitely,
apparently, yeah.
it's obviously very relevant for people in creative work, but I would say it's relevant as well for anyone who wants to find their inner creativity just in life.
I think so. And also for other relevant fields like business and education, because 1 million copies sold in China to all sorts of people. I don't think there are 1 million artists in China, but there's all sorts of businessmen, and they take to my book very much. And even Ma Yun, the Jack Ma, who founded Alibaba, He wrote an endorsement for me, and he said he gives the book to all of his employees. So over the years, I think people have really benefited from it. And if they if they didn't, I would not have bothered to put it into English, because in English, I actually rewrote the whole thing for what I think is more pertinent for an English speaking audience.
Yes, great. Thank you for doing that.
Well,
Otherwise,
thank you for asking me.
but also it's a very solid work in the sense that I would say it's not something that you would sit down and read necessarily in one go on a Saturday or something like that. It's definitely each chapter has opportunities to actually reflect and contemplate and go very deep into different aspects of it.
Thank you. I think you're right. I just got a email from my friend Anne Bogart, the theater director in New York, and she said, "I'm so sorry I haven't replied to you because I took so much time to read the book, and I took it very slowly." And she really enjoyed it, and is recommending it to all of her students and directors.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, but it's brilliant, and don't expect to read it in one go, I would say. But if you're prepared,
You can try.
you
You
can
can try.
try, but actually you're going to miss. I mean, there's so many layers to it. The thing you were saying about the layering in the plays, there's an enormous amount of layering in the book.
Well, that's one thing, and another thing I'm learning now that after being in working for over 40 years, I was talking with some friends the other day, and they're saying, "How come Secret Love and Peach Blossom Land is still going after 40 years?" And I thought about it, and I said, that play has always been a little ahead of its audience. Not way ahead, but just a little bit ahead. And I don't know why, but 40 years later, it's still a little bit ahead. And I think of Creativitry, and I think it's a little bit ahead, but again, it's not so far ahead that you can't, make heads or tails of it. But maybe what you say is a very good advice, is take it slowly.
Stan, it's been so much fun talking to you, and so many things we've
My
talked
pleasure. My
about.
pleasure.
Has there
Yes. Yes.
been a favorite part of our conversation for you today?
You know, just speaking with you, and what you're doing is you're giving me the vibes and the feeling to just, be here, be in the space that I'm in, and that's with you. And then I'm actually, because over my life, I've done, I don't know how many, you know millions of interviews, but and most of the time I'm just saying the things that people want to hear. But the I've said so much today that I don't say in normal interviews, and I think that's because of you, Catherine. I think you put me at ease to be able to say all these things,
Well,
and
that's
I
beautiful.
appreciate that.
I'm delighted that because that's of course is my intention. So, in fact,
Yeah,
this is part of my craft to
exactly. And
invite people.
your wisdom. It's in the end, it all works together. Wisdom and method, they
Yeah,
become one thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much. So,
Thank you, Catherine.
everybody, do go and check out Stan's website, pwshop.com/en for the English. But if you want to read it in Chinese, there is a button for the Chinese version. If you happen
For
to
sure.
be someone
For
who
sure.
also speaks Chinese. Um,
Yes.
please do
Yes.
check out my other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. And that thing that Stan and I were just talking about offering a space for someone just to be, I actually do that for a living in my expansive coaching. So if that's something you'd like to find out
There you
about,
go.
you can have a free taster session. And the link for that will
That
be in the
sounds
show
good.
notes.
That
Thanks
sounds
again,
great.
Stan, so much.
Thanks. It's great to know you, Catherine. Let me know if you're ever in my part of the world. Okay?
100%. If I am
Yes.
in
All
part
right.
of the world, it'd probably be because I'm coming to see you, because you're the only person over
Okay.
there.
All right. Oh, I would
Thank
be
you.
so honored. I would be so honored. Thank you so much.